Hello, everybody. Let's make sure my camera looks okay. It'll do for now. Doesn't have to be perfect. All right. Let's see if I can see live chat. Survey says, where is it? There it is. I knew there was another window somewhere over here. All right, and now I will mute my phone. And yes, I see my man, Mr. Ozone Nightmares in the house today. Good to see you, brother. I am wearing purple. So the color is good too. Boom. Very important since we talking about color grading. Because, have one of these little color checkers. Use it for pre-shoots. Do that right there. Not that that's necessary for me today, but all good. All right. So how about we go ahead and get started? Welcome to everybody here. This is the creator office hours that I try to do on Fridays. For the record, just so everybody knows, there will not be a creator office hours next Friday, whatever date that is. I think that's like the 24th or something. Yeah, the 24th. There will not be a creator's office hours that day. I got other stuff going on that I'm not going to be at the desk. So what I like to do is get together with folks to have an open door policy, if you will, to have people pop in and ask questions, be it about photography, be it about video, be it about editing, be it about some tech stuff, or just what have you. Just hang out. If you got questions, ask them here in the chat. And for everybody that is here on the live stream right now, please do me a favor. Go ahead and hit the thumbs up button inside of YouTube right now. Go ahead and do it right now, or the like button, whatever it's called. Just hit that right now to show me some love. And so YouTube is showing me some love and get more people aware about this community that we're building here. I really do appreciate you doing that. It doesn't cost you a thing. Just hit that. All right. So let's dive into it. Let's look at the chat here. Got some people popping in. If I can hit that button, does that work? I guess that button doesn't work. There it is. So bizarre. Ozone Nightmares in the house. Good to see you, my regular participant. So, man, I really do appreciate you being a regular in here. That does mean a lot, bro. Tiny 1001 from Minnesota. Welcome to you. Minnesota's been on my mind here recently, but that's for another story for another day. Tiny 1001 says, frustrated because my Northern Light pictures I was working on compositing 3 pictures together didn't save right after a couple hours of work. Oh, dude. I am sorry to hear that. Man, I got to tell you, that autosave feature, I know software so-called offers autosave stuff, but bro, after doing this shit for years, I ain't never trusting it. Never trusting it. It is almost like stuck in the back of my head, this little unconscious muscle memory. Control S, Command S. I'll do that literally about every 15 minutes. It just happens. It used to be an effort to do that. Not anymore, man. So I highly recommend if you can do that just on a regular basis, do it. Just make yourself comfortable hitting that keyboard shortcut, and then it'll just become muscle memory and you won't even think anything about it. You're doing it. So yeah, I am very sorry. Very sorry. And Premiere Pro, believe it or not, is the worst when it comes to that stuff. DaVinci Resolve has it built in, and DaVinci Resolve does really good, but even still, I ain't trusting it. I'm going to hit save, do my part. You know what I'm saying? All right. So let me minimize this here screen on my computer because y'all don't need to see that. Again, this is just office hours. If you have questions and comments, go ahead and drop them there in this live chat, and I will read them off, and hopefully I have an answer for you, be it anything in the world of creative space. But just in case we don't have questions, I do try to have some sort of a topic of discussion. And this week, the topic of discussion is color grading. Well, you start out with color correction, and then you get into color grading, and that's talking about the video side of things. Yes, I know you have color grading in image stills or photography, but most people associate color grading to video side of things. So I said I'll put something together to show people some tips and ideas and, actually the fundamentals of trying to get it right, because people are getting their hands on cameras that shoot in a log format much more easier nowadays. It used to be, you needed to pay a good chunk of money to get a camera that's going to shoot in a flat log profile. Not anymore. Now you can get one that's under $1,000 that'll offer you that flexibility. Ozone Nightmare responds, you can use the same trick for that works for other things. Set an alarm every hour and hit the save shortcut. Yeah, it's literally that. You just got to turn it into a habit. You just got to turn it into a habit. And when it's a habit, you don't think about it. It just happens. You know what I mean? So good stuff, man. All right, so let me go ahead and hit my screen share thing. Is that this part here? Let's see. Which one of these is my screen share? Is that it? There it is. Now, and I can turn off the chat window. All right, so everybody looking at the screen. On here, I have DaVinci Resolve, but I also have Premiere Pro. Okay, and it's the same footage. There are a few differences with the interface, but fundamentally it is the same type of process. Okay, so what you have on the screen right now, this is some footage that I shot, I think this had to be last year. Yeah, that's definitely last year. I noticed the opponent, and I was using my Blackmagic cinema camera, and I shoot in B-RAW, and that B-RAW footage comes out with a flat profile. At least I set it to shoot with a flat log profile, meaning the colors are sort of muted and desaturated. There's damn near no type of contrast on it. And what that does is give you more dynamic range when it comes to adjusting the color and the exposure of your video, because you can use a standard profile on your camera for what's called Rec 709, and that'll work just fine too. But if you want to get creative and start working with colors and working with the exposure and so forth, you're going to be limited when you're shooting in a Rec 709 format. Shooting in log is going to allow you to have more fun. But when you do that, it's going to take a little bit more work to get everything squared away. In my opinion, Premiere Pro tries to make it a little bit easier than what DaVinci Resolve does. But I do enjoy the color grading side more so in DaVinci Resolve, because the tools are just, once you get it set up, the tools are pretty intuitive and they're pretty fast to work with. So since everybody has access to DaVinci Resolve, because DaVinci Resolve is free, I will focus more so on DaVinci Resolve today. All right. But first, let me just show you inside of Premiere Pro for people that do have it and haven't figured out how to use log footage. You get your footage here and you just import it into your bin like I've already done. That's the file there, and I've dragged it over to my timeline into this particular sequence. Okay, nothing to it, right? And over here in your effects control, you have this extra little tab and it says source. If you can see it right there. And I click on source and it gives me this whole other menu here all of a sudden. Ideally, all you would see is that in your effects control. But if you click on the source tab, it's allowing you to see the actual footage. And so you change it to decoding from clip the camera metadata if you want to clip, which actually is what you should do. So inside of here, this is basically reading my file, and it knows that I shot this with Blackmagic's Color Science of Gen 5. It knows that already because I set that up manually on the camera. The white balance is set to as shot, which is fine because it lets me play with it in post however I want to play with it. The color space, this is where things get fun, because by default it is set to this here Blackmagic Design color space, and output color space is Blackmagic Design Film. That's normally how it's set. But if you're trying to display this on someone's TV screen and display this on someone's phone, you want it to go to Rec 709. But there's a catch. So this is when I said DaVinci Resolve will make it better and I make it a little bit easier for you from the actual pushing and pulling of colors. But we'll get to that in a minute. In this side of things, we're going to set this to DaVinci Wide Gamut and DaVinci Intermediate, because we're trying to make that color space that we're going to play with as big as we possibly can. All right. So that'll allow us to push and pull so much more. And if you want to apply the LUT, which is basically, I hate saying it like this, but it's almost like saying it's a filter that's put on top of your footage that you've shot. All right. That's what a LUT is. It stands for lookup table, but it can act as a filter. That is a very, very poor layman's terms description of it, but most people understand it when I say it that way. So let me move this down so you can see a little bit there. Okay. And I'm going to hit apply LUT, but I'm not going to use it. But let me show you what happens. It totally changes that footage from a flat profile to a much more contrasted profile. The LUT that is being applied is the built-in LUT that comes with Blackmagic. Adobe knows the Blackmagic LUTs and says, all right, we got it ready to go. Boom, here it is. I'm going to turn it off for now, okay? Because, again, it's just flat. And over here inside of the Lumetri color panel, you get all of these extra tools to play around with the exposure and so on and so forth. Contrast, whatnot, even white balance. All of these typical tools you would use just to get your color corrected. And then there's this tab that says creative. Okay, this is when you get into working with the creative looks of your video footage, because first you need to correct it so it has the proper colors. The reds need to be red, right? That's the correction part of it. Then you get into the grade part where you decide, all right, I really want to make this feel a certain way based on the tonality of it. Think of the movie Joker and think of Tenet, but in particularly think of the movie Joker. That movie is beautifully shot, and the color grading on it, every scene reflects the mood of the color reflects the mood of the scene. Okay. I don't care which scene it is. If it's on the bus, I don't care if it's in this apartment, in the office building, or what have you. If you take a look at it closely, the way the colorist and the director of photography went with it is, they really wanted to make sure you could feel it visually, as well as watch how the actors portray everything on the screen. So that's when color grading becomes fun. And in this tab here, this creative tab, you get a lot of different LUTs that you can find online. All of these SLs, these are LUTs that I've gathered up over the years from various places on the internet. Most of them are free. You literally can just look up LUTs and you can find some free ones out there, or you can find some paid ones. But if we take a look at this one here, we'll say like there's a blue steel. Click on that. And now we had this blue, teal, cool temperature color graded LUT already applied to this. And we can adjust it intensity of it, and so on and so forth. But at the default, that's not bad right there. That already sets a different mood, says nighttime, Friday night football, because of that blue color cast, and it's hitting it right in the highlights. And if I want to play even further, you can go down to these color wheels and push some things. If I want to warm it up in the highlights, I can, and just sort of warm it up. That looks like crap, but again, that's the flexibility you have. And that's how you go from looking at this as a standard flat profile image like this here to what we just saw. Okay. So that's how it is inside of Premiere Pro. It's somewhat easier to get started there, but what I'm going to show you in DaVinci Resolve is it's got so much more power and flexibility and tools built in my opinion. All right, so let's minimize that. And before we move on, are there any questions here from our folks here in the live stream watching right now? Let me scroll through here. I think the fact that I had OneDrive, Photoshop was trying to say OneDrive. Oh, okay. Nope, that's talking about that. All right. And why you say good grief, Ozone Nightmare? What's up? What's the problem? He says good grief. I hope you're all right. Oh, because you can't type. Yeah, we know you can't type. All right, so now let's go ahead and pop back in to my screen here. Now this is DaVinci Resolve, and I got to tell you, yes, I'm an Adobe fanboy, and I use Adobe products all the time. And I still use Premiere Pro. I use Premiere Pro to edit the podcast, as you've seen previously here in the Creator Office Hours. So this is my thoughts. I love using Premiere Pro for editing. I'm really fast in it. And I like DaVinci Resolve for editing too. My keyboard shortcuts are pretty much the same over here, and I can bump through it really quickly and get stuff done. But I like to lean more so in DaVinci Resolve when it comes to the color side of things. I'm sticking with Adobe for now, but when it comes to the color, I'm definitely going to pop into Resolve to knock out color. I mean, this timeline is just like any other timeline that you be getting of NLE video editor. So now we'll go into the color tab down here at the bottom. If I can, there you go, color tab. And it allows me to play around with the footage in there. The difference here is you have this node structure showing up over here on the right versus how Premiere had the Lumetri panel, and it was set up with layers on the timeline. With this, I figured out a workflow that works best for me, because these nodes are called serial nodes, meaning node number 1 right here, whatever I do right here, node number 1, is going to feed into node number 2. And whatever I do in number 2, it's going to feed into node number 3, so on, so forth. It's a serial node structure. Question comes in from the chat. It says, is it that Resolve has more power in what it can do, or it makes it easier than Premiere to apply effects? Okay, good question, sir. Far as the effects, there are some effects inside of Resolve that are really, really good. And then there's some that looks a little too cheesy. I think Premiere's effects are better when it comes to applying them. I think it's easier to apply them in Resolve, but the ones in Premiere look better, and it all just depends on what you're trying to do. But the basic stuff is virtually the same in both of them. If you want to do just crossfades and things like that, they're very similar and easy to do. But when you get into things like camera shake effects and things like that, camera shake effect in Premiere, it's non-existent. You'd have to do a whole bunch of other steps. Camera shake in Resolve is literally like 3 clicks, and it looks pretty good. And vice versa. There's other effects that are, the other way around. But coloring wise, all of these tools here inside of Resolve I mean, this is just the beginning of it. There's so many other tabs here at the top that you can work with, and they're right there, and they work in real time. So that's where Resolve shines, in my opinion, versus Premiere. All right, good question. So we're back to our node structure here. We got the 4 nodes. I set this up pre-show, if you will. So this is the first one. This is basically the raw footage pulled into the timeline. All right. And if I want to play around with this raw footage even more, just like I did in Premiere, I have this tab over here. I should move my face out of the way. I have this tab over here that lets you just dink around with the footage, clip. I can even change the ISO, bump it up if I want to, take it down if I want to, but I'm not going to do that because I know my camera specs, that Blackmagic camera, you get more dynamic range shooting at ISO 3200. Why am I going to change that? But that's just an option that you have here, similar, because it's raw footage that you had inside of Premiere. So now I'm going to go back over here to my color wheels. We'll keep that there as default because that's the default screen. I want to go from this log footage into a color space, which is the DaVinci wide gamut, so I have some flexibility. And so what I've done is brought in what's called a CST, and this stands for color transform effect, which is right there, CST, color space transform. And when I set it up, I told it the input is, I'm coming from a Blackmagic camera, and the input gamma is the film. And I want to set it up to be viewed on all screens, so which is the output color space of Rec 709, gamma 2.4. That's how it is by default. Let me turn these off. Sorry. That's why it didn't look right. There we go. That's how it is by default. So now this piece of footage is ready to go and be viewed. It went from the flat footage to Rec 709. I don't really have to do any more. It is color corrected, if you will. But now we want to do more and get into grading. So I said, well, I want to do something else. I made another node and put a color space transform on it. And I said, I want to give it a bit of a film grain look. Okay. So I go into the settings because I'm going from Rec 709 gamma 2.4, but I still want to keep it in Rec 709, but the output, I want it to be Cineon film log. So that's what I've added over here. And when I've added that, that brings it back to a somewhat flat look, but it's not totally flat. Okay. And then there's this last node over here. Turn that on. This last node has absolutely nothing on it. This is where I can have some fun. This is where I can add film LUTs and things like that. So I'm going to right click on it, hit LUT, and I got a whole list of stuff here. Blackmagic's Rec 709 LUTs, Canon's LUTs. There's so many things in here. Sony, a ton of things in here. But then, like I said, I wanted to give it a bit of a film look. So if I scroll down, there's a LUT folder called Film Looks. And all of these are classics. I mean, the Kodak 2383 is very, very popular. But I will tell you from my own experience, when it came to shooting these football games, this Fujifilm looked the best to me and told the story a little bit better to me. I'll just show you the two in comparison. All right. So this is the Kodak 2383 D60, the D60, the D55s and all of that's shown over here. That is basically giving you the temperature. The 55 is a little bit warmer temperature. 60 is a neutral temperature. 65 is a cooler temperature. I know it's counterintuitive, but trust me, that's just how it is. Okay. So I'll just do the neutral D60, and that gives it a bit of a film look. And you look at that, that's freaking beautiful. It's granted the highlights are a little overexposed, so I can pull those down over here. But that is beautiful footage right there, right out of the gate. And if I play it back, you'll see too. It just has a bit of a film look. It doesn't look as digitized. You know what I mean? So, and that's again the Kodak version of it. So let's switch it. Go back to LUTs, go back to film looks, and go to my favorite, that one. And you see it even though both of them were quote neutral on the color temperature, it being at D60, this looks a touch cooler than the Kodak does. And both cameras that I have, be it the Canon, be it the Blackmagic, for whatever reason, those cameras like to warm things up way more than I prefer. So I like to try to pull that warmer temperature back. And this one right here almost nails it right out the gate. Even though if I'm looking at my scopes over here, the balance on it is pretty good. The color balance is pretty good. And if I look at, say, this vector scope, it's not overly saturated, but if I want to add some saturation, I can. So I'll just push this saturation up like so. And look at that. And I still have room to push the saturation. Okay. These little squares here let you know the safe broadcast level that you can push it. You don't really want to push it beyond those squares. And I'm pushing it right about here. And that looks just, looks so good. So let me do something here. So I'm going to undo that. Let's say we'll reset that. And then I'm going to do another node. So let's say node. And now I'll do the saturation over here. So now let's take a look at the difference. So that's boosting it up. Pretty good saturation level. All right, so this is without the saturation and just using the film look. And that's with that additional saturation. Look at the reds in the jerseys here. The reds there. Look at the field. So much cleaner, so much nicer. And this is just adding these filters on top of it, adding these LUTs on top of it. Okay, so let's play around a little bit more. And we can just try to, decide, is there something else we want to do to this footage to further enhance the mood? And again, I like the Friday Night Lights look of it. So we can come in here and play around with the curves and just changing the contrast of it. Let's boost that up there. Pull that down a little bit more. That makes it a little bit sharper. That's an idea. I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to reset it. So that's one option. But if you want to play around with the skin tones on it, we'll go over here to our color wheels and you look at this gamma wheel. That's typically where skin is going to hide, or not hide, where skin is found when it comes to color grading. I want to warm it up a little bit more, like so. If I want to give it a bit of a teal and orange look, I can just take these shadows, push it over to the teal side over here. Take the gain, which is roughly the highlights, push that over to the orange side, like so. Now that doesn't look great, but again, this is flexibility, and you can really just sort of dial it in slowly. So I'm right here back in the gain, in the gamma, which is the midtones, and pull stuff back to teal and just play around with it. And then you notice it changed the whites on it a little bit. So you have to take into consideration when you're playing around with the color grade, how is it affecting everything in the scene? All right. And then if I look over here at this vector scope, that saturation is starting to look like it's pushed a little too much. So let's pull it back some. And it starts to look a little bit better. And again, it starts to look a little bit more filmic, if you will, with a bit of a stylized color on it. So all of this stuff is just so fun to play around with. I'm resetting everything back now, but it is my favorite tool, when it comes to color. And if I want to make some adjustments to other aspects in it, there's these curve tools here. So let's hit curves, and let's see, this is hue versus hue. That is hue versus saturation. Say I want to take the reds in here and desaturate only the reds. So you have all of these, this color spectrum here. And if I hit this part on the screen, you see it's got this little eyedropper tool sampler. If I click that, it plots it down here. And now I'm just going to drag this button down, and it should desaturate the reds a little bit. But because it's so wide, I could really narrow it down. So I'm going to undo, and I'm going to put another point here, and it'll start to desaturate a little bit better without affecting some of the other stuff, like so. Or if I want to go hue versus hue, let's see, there's hue versus hue right there. You can push a red or push a hue to a different hue. It's a little difficult at times because some hues don't, it's really hard to go from red to green, if you know what I mean. So you have to be careful when it comes to your thought process. But say you want to make those blues a little bit different. So let's click on the blues, and it gave me my little plots down there. And so I could push these blues to a little bit different color, more of a teal. See how it's affecting his pants now? See right there? It's got a little bit more teal in it, but I don't want that. Let's take it down. Now it gets closer to the purple side of things. And it's doing the same for everything else in the scene with that color hue. And if I want to get more of it, I just have to broaden the plots down here at the bottom. It says I want you to pick up everything that's within this particular range. And again, all of that stuff just takes a lot of time to figure out what works best for you. Because yeah, that looks like crap right now. I'm overdoing it just so you could see on the screen. Because a lot of times stuff that you do in these tutorials don't translate to the YouTube screen because of all the compression and stuff. But I'm trying to overdo it so you can see the stuff that's happening as I pulled it down. Look at all of the pants, So I pull it up, look at all of the pants there. Lots of different tools in there. But man, I freaking love DaVinci Resolve, and I love all of the actual LUT effects that are right there at my fingertips. And there's a lot of times you don't have to do a lot of adjustments, pushing and pulling and things like that. But this is, let me see, this is what it started out as. And now this is where it is. And another tip, when you start doing your color correction and grading, find a hero frame. Like right here, this is what I would call my hero frame, because people are nice and sharp and in focus. There's no blur. The light and exposure looks good. And it's probably going to carry, whatever you do here is probably going to work for the remaining frames of that particular scene. 8 times out of 10 it will. So you find that hero frame and you work with it. So I know I got skin tones in here that I can take a look at for everybody. Excuse me. And again, the whole lighting effect, all of that stuff makes a difference. So let's turn those back on. There we go. So even if I wanted to take a look at the skin tones in here, I don't know how many people in here. There's a lot of different people in here, but their skin tone should be good to go regardless of who I click on. So if I just clicked on my son here, this is telling me he's pretty good. Because if you look at this vector scope right here on the right, there's this little line right here. This is the skin tone line. And wherever you point your cursor, you're hoping that the marker shows up on that particular line, be it right dead center or just going up this line. So I'm going to put it right there for him. And it looks pretty good. Put it on my man Patu back here in the back. Patu is not black, but look at where his skin tone is. It's looking pretty good. And then this is Giovanni, looking pretty good. But if I want to push it, I can. I'll just go down here to this offset wheel. This is basically like a global adjustment for whatever piece of footage that you're looking at. It'll adjust the exposures. If I want to crank it up, make it brighter, I can. If I make it darker, I can. Okay. So let's just reset that back. There we go. And if I want to change the color hues in it, I can. So let's push it towards the reds like that. Now, if I put my marker on there. It's way out of range, of course, because it looks like crap. So let's reset it back. But if I could say I want to warm it up just a touch, and watch the vector scope over here. Watch how everything moves in this vector scope as I make the adjustments. Okay, so I'm going to push it towards the magentas and purples and just pushing over there. And that ain't great, but you can see how, again, I have to overdo stuff so you can see it in YouTube, but you can see how it affected the overall image. So let's pull it back, and I just want to warm it up just a touch because I want to make sure all of the skin tones, not just one person, is going to hit well on that skin tone line, and they are quite nice. Love that stuff, man. Love this. And there's other things in here to consider when it comes to working with LUTs. So first off, you got to know your camera. You can do this with any, it don't necessarily have to be a Blackmagic camera. It could be a Sony camera. I have some Sony footage in here. I guess I could pull that in too. It could be a Sony camera in the S-Log 2. And when you go to buy these LUTs or even get these free LUTs, be sure to read the description of the LUT to understand what it's going to do with your footage based on the camera that you're working with. There's a LUT pack that I bought called Lehman LUTs. Absolutely love it. And he's put it together, and it works with a bunch of different cameras. And all it does is take your log footage to make it Rec 709, and it gives it really good color. So it doesn't do any color grading. It's part of the color correction part of it, and they look really good. But in his notes, he says that if you're going to shoot your footage, you need to make sure you're exposing to the right. And what that means is exposing to the right of the histogram. Let me see if I could show you a histogram. Well, I don't have a histogram open right now. But basically, you need to overexpose your image just a little bit, okay, before using his LUT. So shoot your footage a little bit hot, then apply the LUT, and it's going to look great. So let me show you Lehman LUTs, actually. So we'll click here. Let's get rid of these nodes real quick, and I get rid of this node too. Delete node, and this one, Blackmagic. We'll just reset it. Hold on, I'll just reset it. Reset node there, and reset this node. All right, now we're starting from scratch. So if I go in, LUT, Lehman LUTs should be down here. Yeah, Lehman LUTs. And this is Blackmagic. And you see I also have the Canon version of them. I paid for both of them. Lehman LUTs. And if I go to Pro, and I got 6K Gen 5 film, boom. And it did it. And it looks great. But notice how dark it is. It's dark because he warns you, you're supposed to overexpose it. All right, so let's reset it again. And since this is log footage, I can go over here and just play around and just try to overexpose it, if you will. So let's make this 6,000. So 6,000, something like that. And bring the exposure up like that. And now let's apply that LUT and see what happens. Blackmagic Pro Gen 5. There. And that looks pretty good. It's overexposed, but it looks pretty good. Back here. Like that. It's clean. It is simple Rec 709 footage that'll look good on any screen that you have. I do see one flaw in it, and that is the greens in it. The green is a little bit strong. If you look here on the RGB parade, it's clipping a little bit right there on RGB parade in the green side of things. So of course, I'm going to go over here to the gain, and I'm going to reduce the greens. And again, the DaVinci Resolve makes this so much easier. I just go to this green tab and just pull it down. And so now if you look over there on that parade, it's not slapping the top of that meter anymore. And it didn't affect anything else. And I literally just pulled it down a couple ticks. like that. And if I want to do the overall gamma, just pull it all down to offset. That's making the whole thing darker. We don't want that. Let's reset. Let's brighten it up some. Bring all of the highlights down just a touch by using the gain. And then take a look at those greens. Pull those greens back. Just barely. And it's looking good. It's a very, very, very nice LUT. And I want to say that the LUT pack is like $50. And that is, again, that's just barely scratching the surface and spending time on this particular piece of footage. But I'm going to do the color boost here like so. Because color boost is about like vibrance in photo editing. It's taking the hues and looking at the luminance values of it, not necessarily the saturation of it. There we go. That looks pretty good. It ain't perfect because I just overdid it, but looks pretty good. So, any questions in here in our live stream? Wow, we've burned through time. Dang, it's been 45 minutes. We've burned through some time. My bad. While I'm gonna find some Sony footage here. We can play with that too while I wait on any of your questions that you may have. Thank you all for being here on Creator Office Hours. Let's see if I can find some footage from Sony camera. I thought I had some. Yeah, I do. There it is. So we're just going to drag that right there. And this is some old footage. I think this is shot with the A1. Like so. So let's pull that down into the timeline and we can work with that there. All right. So back into Resolve. Why is my... There we go. Back into Resolve. Again, this is a piece of Sony footage, flat log, and it's S-log. I think it's S-log 2. No, it doesn't say. All right. But you should know that. You should definitely make sure you take note of that. And again, we'll just start with our typical workflow here. This is the brand new piece of footage. It's not raw, but it's in log. So I don't have all of the extra tools that I had over here on the left where it says camera raw. I can't play around with it, because it's not raw. It's just log, okay, flat. So let's add another node. Do our color space transform, like so. Oh, dude, man, thank you. Super chat comes in from Ozone Nightmare. I have to run a bit early, but this has been a great stream as usual. Thank you very much, Mr. Pruitt. Have a great weekend and talk to you when you're back live again. Oh, thank you, brother. I appreciate you, Mr. Ozone Nightmare. Thanks for the super chat. Oh, so damn kind. All right. So here we're going to do another color space transform. We're going to go from Sony footage. So just scroll down. Sony S gamut. The input gamma should be Sony S log. I think it's S log 2. Yep. And then we're going to take it to Rec 709. So it could be viewable on everybody's screen. And it's gamma 2.4. There. So we went from this log footage to Rec 709 just with one node. All right. And the colors on this look good. But again, remember, we're worried about our flexibility because I'm looking at the highlights right here on the screen. They're a little hot. Can I pull those highlights down without destroying it? Let's see. So I'm going to make a new node right here, there. And we're going to make this the highlights nodes. Let's see what happens if I pull the highlights back. Does it destroy damage? Nope, it didn't, because of that great dynamic range. That looks good. That's the beauty of shooting in log, man. It goes a long freaking way. So let's play around with some color. Let's boost the color. Looking good there. Looking good. Saturation. Not bad at all. All right, so this would be the hero frame, yeah, because we got more red in there. We can see those highlights. I'm going to pull these highlights back just a little bit more. This looks good. I dig it. And if we wanted to play with the contrast, you can just make a curve, you know. Make an S curve. Really brought that contrast out. My highlight's still a little bit hot to me in my eyes. My scopes don't necessarily say the highlights are bad, but well, it says the reds are. So let's pull the red down a touch. There we go. Looks good. I'm still sensing a lot of green here in the skin. So we'll go to the vector scope. Oh, it's not green. It's more magenta. So that you see right now, the skin tone is not necessarily lining up on that line. We need to get it a little bit closer there. So we can just take the offset, push it over there just a little. Like that. Now let's see what happens. There we go. We're getting closer. Right about there. Yeah, and it's definitely pulling away from the green. And at some point in time, you'll be able to notice stuff like that when you're looking at the screen. You'll see when white balance isn't quite right. If you do this enough times, you'll be able to see it visually before even looking at scopes. There. So now I'm going to pull the saturation back because it's starting to clip in the reds. You see this red is getting close to that little box. And that's because that little red headband is right there. So let's take the saturation, pull it back some. Now it's getting there. Check the skin. Skin, it's almost there. Can pull it over a little more. Right about here. Skin's good. Yeah, the skin's good. That looks better. But again, that's Sony footage. That's not even raw, but it's still good stuff, man. Good piece of footage. Play it back. I shot this for just another little motivational project that I had in my head and use my son as a model because I can. You know, I can. I'll probably put a link to that video in the description here. All right, it's about time to get up out of here. If you all have any more questions, feel free to ask here in the live chat. I really do appreciate y'all being here and hanging out with me on our creator office hours. I enjoy doing this stuff, especially when we get the questions in from people regarding stuff on the content creator side of things, be it photography, video editing, so on and so forth. And heck, at some point, we'll probably even start talking about modeling, since I've been doing more modeling here recently. It's so weird, that dynamic of, you know, I'm a photographer and a video creator, but getting work for that has been a lot tougher here recently. But yet I'm in front of the camera. I've been getting work. It's so, wow. I don't understand the dynamic, but I'll take it as long as it's paying, you know. Hey, and Tanya W is in here. Good to see you, lady. She says, have a great day. I've been lurking. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for lurking, and thank you for clicking on the like button there inside of YouTube. I appreciate you, lady. All right, I'm going to get out of here. I have a call coming up here shortly. Fingers crossed on that one. This is another creator opportunity. Speaking of the whole modeling thing, this is, again, I'm going to be in front of the camera. So, well, at least I'm pitching for it, or they wanted to meet with me about it. Let's see if it actually works for me and I actually work for them. And, we continue this content creator thing henceforth and forevermore. Thank you again. Make sure you're watching the podcast at pruitt.com/podcast that recorded the other day. A lot of fun catching up with her and talking about all of our day-to-day, everyday life stuff. That is Everyday People Podcast. Again, it's at pruitt.com/podcast, or it's right here on the YouTube channel under the tab, the playlist for podcasts. If you're a Patreon member, thank you to all of you being Patreon members. We've added some more. If you're interested in supporting this show, supporting this channel, feel free to go to patreon.com/AntPruitt. There's the free tier there, and there's also the paid tier there, but I enjoy being over there in that community. All right, everybody, have yourselves a good weekend. Again, no creator office hour next week, no podcast next week. At least I'm not recording one. She might, but I doubt she will. So it's going to be about 10 days or so before you all see me back online. Thank you again for the support. Create, dominate, do something good for yourself, do something good for someone else, and I shall see y'all next time. Y'all take care.